Same thing happening.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's 8:18. So thank you for all being here. And, got a busy morning. Try to get a lot packed in a short amount of time. So I'd just like to take care of a few housekeeping items. Can I have a motion to accept the meetings from the last minute?
The minutes from the last meeting. Okay.
Minutes from the last meeting, sorry. Okay. A second?
Second.
Any discussion about the minutes? All approved?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. And then I didn't want to get caught up at the end trying to rush to get a new meeting date. So I suspect unless there's some minor miracle, we're going to be discussing the proposal again in the new year. And so I'd like to set up a meeting date for January. And I was going to propose sometime during the week of the 9th. I know the open space meets on the 11th. I think the other committees, commissions, might be early in the month too. So meeting after every commission's had their meeting might be a good idea, so the commissions can discuss, what we're talking about. So might the 12th work?
It's a Thursday.
That's a Thursday.
Works for me.
Works. And then the other thing is the 8:15 start times seem to be a little rough in terms of opening up the building and the cold weather and all that. I suggested that initially, so we could finish up with this business and get on with our days, but it might make sense to start a bit later in the day.
8:30?
Well, I was going to say 9 o'clock or 9:15 once the building's open. We don't have to worry about getting in.
I think I have my keys. I'll be here. I'll come.
I'm still fine with 8:15. I personally like it.
Me too.
Okay, then we'll stay with that. That's fine.
15? Kick it much later.
So the 12th.
It's okay with you, Jerry?
Yeah, that works.
Okay.
I'll make you some coffee. Great.
Okay, so our next meeting will be on the 12th at, starting at 8:15. Okie doke. All righty. Then I just want to move on to the next item, which is talking about where we are with our Phase 1 recommendations. So Martha, about a week or so ago, furnished the parking signs. They're beautiful, and they've been installed. And we had a chance to see them. And then I think actually yesterday, John and Mike finished installing the remaining signs we wanted to post, which are the leaving open space signs. And did you put up some markers also for the walkway, indicating which the path to walk?
We didn't. We were debating that, but we thought, well, maybe it would be pointing towards the marsh, and we didn't want to encourage people walking.
Okay.
But the other thing that we thought was on areas other than where the boundary is, it might be just open space signs, might be the little round ones might be handy in the future.
Okay.
But we obviously mark the boundary.
Okay. Well, that's what we wanted to do. So, speaking of
the public commentary, some of the public commentary feedback that we received was people didn't know where the area began, and the only signs we had were the ones that said leaving open space.
Oh.
So there's nothing. We didn't have anything to designate when you first drive in to the property.
Are there, question for open space, are there signs for entering open space available? Entering open space property?
Well, I think it just says O-Lime open space.
Just do that. Well, we have this sensitivity really over, who's controlling the property at this point. So we've been reluctant to use signs that say open space.
With town property signs?
Leaving town of O-Lime open space. The open space is supposed to be covered up, that's all.
It was, yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Wouldn't cost much to get something made up. Little one.
I mean, I could,
masking tape isn't gonna last very long.
I could do another sign Ron, I mean, we just need one.
Okay.
You know, too, that, because we belong to CCM, they have a print shop that they do for municipalities, extremely cheap.
Signage though?
Yes, yep, they were at the CCM convention.
Yeah.
I have the information, John, I can send it to you.
That'd be great.
They really want to work with the town
Okay.
on this.
We have open space signs, if you decide it's open space property, that are metal and round, and identify the property.
Yeah, I think the issue with that is that we haven't really, formally decided on control of the property. It's just best to leave.
Before you put up more signs, I think leaving the property alone, that tells you you're on the property right there. It's pretty obvious. If you're leaving the property, you're on the property.
Yeah, I think the issue is you don't, as you drive in, the way those signs would be positioned, you don't see that, because that's stuff you see as you're leaving the property. Another item that's come up is, there have been, some people have said that there's been vehicle traffic down the path, leading from where sort of the parking area is, down to the waterfront. And I just assume that would be a walking trail for the time being. I don't really see why vehicles need to go down there at this point in time. So I'm wondering if that's another issue we should address. Somehow just saying it's a walking path or putting up a barrier to prevent vehicles. I'd like to discuss that quickly, if we need to address that.
Personally, I don't see that being a problem, just that it's an existing road. That's the road that's even delineated on the maps going back the last 60 years, to some sort of a turnaround that used to exist down there, but currently is blocked by some concrete debris.
Okay, any other comment on that?
Yeah, didn't we talk about that being a spot where people can drop off their canoes, kayaks, things like that, turnaround?
I'd like that to be a loading, unloading area.
Yeah, that's the way I looked at it myself.
Well, that may come to pass, but I think at this point, so we just spoke about how we're being very careful about not posting signs with open space, right? So let's be fair here. There's no need to go down the path at this point to unload kayaks.
Why is that?
Well, because you can't launch kayaks down there.
What? Sure you can. You can.
It's very difficult.
Right.
That doesn't negate the fact that the ability exists.
Well,
I mean, we talked about getting lost in the minutia, and I thought we were trying to dance towards recommendations, and things like that, getting sidetracked again.
It definitely isn't easy, but I don't know that we should be prohibiting it. I mean, even when you look back at the last if you look over the last 20 years of when this property was acquired, there's specific discussion about how that path exists for car parking down there, for unloading, and even through open space and collecting commission meetings, minutes that I've come across. It's specifically mentioned that there's a turnaround down there, a parking area as a loading and
yeah, but look, we just went through the whole process of establishing parking, which I thought we had an agreement that would be the parking for the time being. I mean,
that is the parking.
We don't want parking at the end. You have a kayak or a canoe to load or unload. Why are we going to make people walk it?
Well, we haven't established it as a kayak launch at this point.
Listen, Fred, come on. It's deeded water access. And whether we like that or not, or think or whether we or you or somebody else here thinks that it's not the best place to do it, it is a legal right of the public to do so. So I don't understand why we keep trying to obstruct that.
We could put we could do loading or unloading only, or something that makes it so people don't park at the end of that road, but I don't know that obstructing it from vehicle traffic.
Well, look, I'm a little surprised this is coming up at this point as well, because we spent a couple of months discussing what this committee would allow and what it wouldn't allow, and it was never proposed to have vehicles go down there and allow loading and unloading. I mean, we didn't discuss that. So I don't think we should allow that at this point.
We purposely started at the uplands, and we agreed that we wouldn't even talk about that area in our previous discussions. So
Are we gonna just have people walking on the marsh to try to get a boat in wherever they wish to put it in, all over the marsh?
I don't want to see that. I mean, I think we could regulate it,
How?
signage and the pathway. And, I mean, I think Harbors has a proposal for,
But at this point, there's a big mud flat a lot of the time, so are you proposing that somebody's gonna take, there'll be an arrow, go ahead? Or, I mean, it seems to me a cart before the horse to say that any of these things is going to happen. And have we evaluated that the marsh that people can walk on it?
Well, to that point, Tim, the old gravel driveway that used to exist, which was the existing boat ramp, yeah, it has tidal vegetation growing over it. But as Mike went out and did his when he was doing the soil science, what'd you call it? The probing. He couldn't probe through a significant portion of that entire marsh that used to be the existing gravel driveway. Now, so that there is hard-packed gravel placed above a marsh that has since had some tidal vegetation growing over the top of it. But the fact of the matter is that you can walk out there and hard pack without being in the sinking water and still be able to access the river. Now, being the mud flat is a situation 2 hours out of each tide cycle. You still have a remaining 4 hours on each tide cycle that you can access the water from a navigation standpoint to be able to get your kayak in without being in the mud flat. So we got 8 hours out of every 2 tide cycles that make that area available. And the fact that the existing gravel road still exists, in essence, underneath that marsh, provides a firm walking ground for people to get out to that spot.
But on this map, is this not where the road is?
Yeah, correct. That's where the road is.
This is not anywhere near that.
That's a draft, is all that was.
Draft.
Application.
Somebody's making a proposal, so, I mean, these are good ideas and we ought to evaluate them, but I don't know that we just say, oh, back your car in and...
Well, that's the thing. Your car wouldn't even get anywhere near over here currently, right? So if there's a turnaround, there's an existing turnaround right here where if someone's able to unload their kayak, go park their car back, they can easily, with a dolly or whatever, make their way down to the river without even having this ability yet. But the fact of the matter is that the existing gravel road still exists there. It's just covered in tidal vegetation.
So I'm going to jump in here, and what I want, a little bit of background here. My impression was that this committee has a limited authority of how to manage this property. And what I was trying to do is steer the committee so we allow and address the concerns of public access to the property. And I think we've come a long way to do that, all right? Along the way, little things keep on coming up. People have different views. There's a concern being expressed about vehicles going down there. Now, I'm going to drop that subject for now. And we're not going to touch that in this meeting because I wanted to move on to the bigger question, which we're already starting to get into in this discussion, really, what's going to happen to the property, okay? So, probably vehicle traffic down that road is not going to be a huge issue over the next month or so. So I don't see it as a burning issue. And, let's move on to what is supposed to be the meat of this meeting, which is we're talking about recommendations. Okay, so the way I'd like to go about that, it's 8:30. I'd like to give I'll say a few things about my recommendations. We'll go around and everybody will get a couple minutes just to give an overall impression of what I've come up with, what you like, what you don't like. If you don't like something, then mention what you think might be viable alternatives. And the point of that is just to do some range finding to kind of get us somewhere on the right map or see where we're all sitting on this, okay? We're not going to get into every detail. So I'd like to give about half an hour for that. We have members from the public here. I'm sure they'd like to weigh in. I'd like to allow 10 minutes for that. Again, your comments, to the point. The committee will have a chance to hear from the public, and then we can come back and have about another 15 minutes or so to kind of set the direction for the next meeting. So that's the way I like to structure this, all right? Okay, so you've all, at least the committee members have had a chance to read my, my shot at the draft.
The shortest, yeah.
And again, this is what I thought would be the most balanced approach going forward. I realize it's not going to satisfy everybody, and I have no illusions that some of this stuff it might be difficult to do, but I think, you know, we've got to come together and try to solve this problem. So, you know, the first recommendation was shared control. It seems for jurisdictional, you know, reasons that's the way to go. And I think important part of that, I know that might be difficult, but one way to ease that is to initially come up with some agreements between the two commissions about what the scope will be and iron out some of these issues so they don't become thorns going down the road. And then, you know, I think there's been enough, you know, discussion to say, you know, we should at least give Harbor Management, referring to recommendation 2, give the Harbor Management Commission an opportunity to come up with a proposal to see if it's feasible. Great to have access to the water. You know, and both from an environmental point of view, financial point of view, all those considerations. So, and then, you know, over the course of the last couple of months, I mean, I think the underlying theme is better access to the water and to public lands. And for various reasons, there are plots of land here and there that belong to the town or the state that are not being used that have the potential to offer water access. So I think, you know, the town should explore that. And also part of that is marking existing options more clearly. And as an example, there's the Town Woods Road, Town Woods Landing off of, I think, Sandpiper. You know, I just learned about that a few months ago. You know, that there should be a sign at the top of that road indicating that there's a launch available there for the kayaks. I think, you know, I'm new to town government. We're all doing this as volunteers in our free time. We all have some, and there's a lot that we have to deal with, so I think we all have to, you know, support each other to do a better job, basically. And if there have been some oversights in the past, I think that happens, and we have to move on and be positive. So, anyway, the last thing I did, you know, when I put up these recommendations, I try to foresee a few issues that will come up as we discuss this. So, I'm not going to go into those in detail, but discuss it, you know, maybe. Anyway, that's my little introduction. So, Jared, why don't you take the first shot at just a couple minutes of your impression, your thoughts.
Just overall? Or
yeah, just, sorry. Yeah, I don't want to get into the details now. Just,
yeah.
You know, which way to try to steer this thing.
No, I think that's right. I think it's nice we have a proposal out here in front of us to be presented momentarily. I do want to just make sure that we keep our ultimate, like, one-line mission in scope here, which is to provide access to the waterway as a function, and this committee can make recommendations, and I think there's plenty to discuss, but ultimately I do think we are moving towards that goal, which is great, and I look forward to hearing some more kind of concrete proposals about how we're going to actually recommend that to the board.
All right, and let's stick with inland wetlands, John.
I just want to thank Fred for putting this together. I'm sure it took some time. It's a good starting point. But I will say, I think we need to remember we're talking about a parcel that's 2.8 acres. So this recommendation of divided responsibility, I think, is overly complicated. I'm a fan of keeping it simple. And I'll leave it there for my initial impression.
Okay. Okay. Sloan.
First of all, I passed out the 2 sheets here. This is a draft. This is just a place to start a discussion as far as, you know, what a walkway might look like. location I just happened to pick on the larger sheet here. I picked there because it's the shortest distance to where it looks as if there's the best access to the water. If you go over, well, there's a ditch that's further to the west that doesn't show on this print actually, and that may be a possibility as well. But this is just a draft. It was just an idea, a place to start is all it is, with a an observation deck back towards the bank, and then one out towards the water that would support physically the installation of a ramp and a floating dock. So it's just a draft. It's just an idea. As far as recommendation number one, the only question I would have about that is if for some reason we decide not to do any sort of floating dock, or for whatever reason, if the state gives us, if we have trouble, our ability to manage it is lost according to this, because if open space is going to control above high water and we control below high water, well, there is nothing below high water because there's no dock. So I would just question that then they would have complete control over it. And other than that, I think we're the business about going down one lane there to the end. I think we ought to just leave it the way it is for now. It's not as if there's there's a backlog of people wanting to drive down there. And other than that, I think we just keep working on it here.
Okay. All right.
Tom, where is the channel in relation to your platform here?
The channel, actually, I was down there at dead low water yesterday with Terry, and if you look at the more specific drawing, the mud flat is roughly 10 feet. At low water, the mud flat is roughly 10 to 12 feet wide. It says mud flat there. This is pretty representative, actually. I went down there and measured a number of times at low water.
It would be considered the profile view on his,
Yeah, if you look at the profile view, exactly. You can see where the ramp goes down, and Horseneck Creek is, it's less than 20% of the width at low water of where the water is. I don't know if you call it a channel or not, because
it's the natural tidal creek.
Yeah, it's a natural, I don't know where it gets as deep as it gets, and I don't know where it gets shallow on the other spot, but there's plenty of room for people to kayak by, back and forth. If that dock was there, at low water, there's plenty of room to get by. I don't think you could bring a motorboat in there. Of course, you couldn't anyway, because you can't get in there if it's within a couple hours either side of low water. So to answer your question, hopefully, there's plenty of room for everybody to get by, if that's what you were wondering. Is that what the question was?
Well, I guess if you have a ramp going up the end of this image on the map,
right,
it would be to the right of that dark line somewhere, but not too far out.
Right. It has to be so low water, the float is still floating.
The float has to be about 18 inches above the mud flat.
Right.
Okay, I think it's important to be thinking about those details at that point, because it's a little bit further out. It's good that you guys are thinking about it. So, Mike Barnes, to you. Just some initial thoughts on the overall direction of the recommendations.
I just still have some concerns that the others voiced of just having one entity have control over the upland based on the history of their current control of it. That's really my biggest comment that I see that stands out on this recommendations.
Okay. Anything else?
Not specifically, no.
Okay. Mike?
No, I'm probably the newbie at the table. And so I've been learning both when I've been serving on the Open Space Commission and this little committee. And obviously, this is a controversial topic. And I think if we don't come together and co-manage the property, nothing will happen. And I'm a big fan of having something happen and getting something done. At the minimum, I would like to see a viewing platform, at the minimum, a viewing platform. And I see if we don't work together, that's not going to happen, in my humble opinion and with my short experience. So the question is, okay, how do two commissions work together as a team to get something done? And I was thinking about that last night because John expressed his concern when we were putting up the signs. And so maybe we need a referee or an arbiter or a final decision maker. We have one in the Board of Selectmen. If they agree that we should have access to water here and direct two commissions to work this and get it done, I think it'll get done. But we have an arbitrator, so if the two commissions can't agree on something, we work together.
So the Board of Selectmen would decide it in the end?
That would be,
anyhow.
Which is what they're going to do anyhow. So, and I think, we could have joint meetings when we're on this topic alone, so that the rest of the public could actually chime in and have some discussion with us as a joint two commissions meeting together. I've done that repeatedly in my former position in Greenwich. Two commissions would often work together to get a project done. I think if we have a goal, get access to the water and or at the minimum, as I said, a view of the water, we get our guidance from the Board of Selectmen. They agree to do the project and we work together. So the fact that the Open Space Commission has control of the upland won't matter because the goal is to get access below mean high water. I mean, maybe it's a simplistic view, but I'm really interested in getting something done. And I think if we don't work together, I'm convinced nothing will get done. I mean, I may be naive, but I see we have more to do working together than not. And, what's happening is personalities are getting in the way of getting the job done, I think, on both commissions. And that, you've got to get around that somehow. So have an arbitrator, have a goal, and we're directed to work together. Now, maybe that's naive, but that's what I would do.
I don't know that it's naive, but my comment on that is we've asked harbors a few times to tell us what their vision for, a dock or a floating, what's their vision for the water access. But I don't think we've ever asked Open Space what their vision for a 2.8 acre parcel is. I mean, their next biggest parcel is 30 acres. I mean, the areas that they're normally working with are 30, 65, 185, 195, 105 acres. So what, after 20 years of pretty much sitting idle, what is the vision that Open Space has for this parcel?
Okay.
That would certainly help me, would probably sway my opinion if we had a better idea of what, because I mean, I don't see a trail system in there. It's 2.8 acres. A lot of it is the actual right-of-way, and a majority of it is the coastal wetlands. So you're not going to have a trail over that. So I'll tell you right now, in my mind, the land is more of access to the water, so that for like the parking that we've done and potential turnaround for loading and unloading. So what's Open Space's vision for this?
Okay, so first of all, thanks for your comments and being succinct. And you had a follow-up. Anybody else want to follow up briefly on what we talked about?
Well, yeah, the only comment I would say is that, as Mike said, there are all those other parcels that Open Space has, and how many of them are waterfront? None of them, right?
Yeah.
So this is different for them.
Yeah, no, good point. Okay, about to turn it over to the public. I just want to add, one thing I forgot to say is that this proposal for shared control was brought up at the last open space meeting, and it was discussed there. And the open space committee unanimously agreed that they would be willing to at least, look at that. So there is some goodwill.
Look at what?
At the shared control. Okay.
My concern is that there's still just an overlap, conflict of interest that exists. I don't know if anybody wants to talk about it, but I feel like there's always going to be some sort of bias to have an absorbent amount of over control, or that's just my personal opinion. I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but that's just the way I feel about it. I don't understand how this is any different than any other town property per se, like coming off of Sill Lane and Boston Post Road, there's a little town green there in the middle. Like, I don't understand how this would be any different than any other town of Old Lyme property that's maintained by the town, and not specifically open space, such as Haynes Park. It's a park, it's a water access, it's not maintained by open space, even though it's an open parcel. So I don't understand what would designate this one as an open space parcel versus that one not being an open space parcel and controlled specifically by that commission.
Yeah, okay, go ahead, Martha.
I just have a question. Financially, how would committees break up the care and maintenance of the land? And if you're going to build a viewing station or a dock, which committee or which commission is going to handle the financials of it? I mean, open space maintains their land, and harbor management, you have your things that you handle, but financially, it comes to somebody's budget. And I think that has to be put into this recommendation of how that's going to take place. I mean, I'm all for a viewing deck in that area. It's a beautiful area, and it should be enjoyed. Whether it goes beyond that, that's up to deep. I suppose you have to get recommended. But who's going to maintain it in the future? And who's going to wash it and make sure that it's clean and tidy? And I did see in your recommendations on here, and I know that it's way in the future, but personally, as older people, would prefer a backrest on a bench, not just a bench.
I agree.
And so I think that those are things that you should consider and think about as you develop plans for proposals.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the only reason I did that is if people are walking out there with a kayak and they're swinging it around, I figured that they might hit something if there was a back there, but no, I agree. I originally had backs on the seats, but.
To answer your question, Martha, from a harbor management standpoint, I believe like we currently maintain our town dock, our Pilgrim's Landing upland with our funds from our harbor management fund. We've gone through some initiatives to continue to raise more money into our harbor management fund, which would enable us to better serve these underutilized waterfront properties as far as a maintenance standpoint and following through on the vision for water access. So I think, we've discussed in our harbor management, putting in some items into capital expenditures for the budget for harbor management to help potentially pay for some of these items. So I think we are addressing that concern as far as financially coming up with a plan to how to pay for it.
Well, not just pay for it.
Yeah, and maintain it, just like we already maintain all the other properties. I mean, just like the town of Old Lyme maintains Haynes Park and anything else that's the town, town woods. So it's just part of the process.
And you have to remember, it doesn't matter which finances comes out. It's all taxpayer money.
Yeah, right.
For the most part.
Well,
The difference is that harbor.
Well, it's a responsibility.
To that point, though, like harbor management raises a lot of their own funds to make their own improvements on their own properties through our mooring fees.
Yes.
So it's not necessarily we're taking money out of the town budget in that specific instance. But we do plan to request it, whether it's Harbor Management Town of Old Lyme Fund or the Town of Old Lyme funds by themselves. I see what you mean. They're the same fund in essence.
But Martha, I think that two commissions working together would figure that out. So that the expense of getting access to the water, would be done by harbor management. Other expenses that might involve upland or the parking or something, or I don't know that we need a trail or. Yeah.
Signage, yeah.
Is there a chance that Park and Rec could have a mechanism over open spaces, outstanding conflicts, to potentially be the intermediate? I don't know. I don't know if that's an option. I don't know what Parks and Rec's like or anything, but I'm just saying it's no different than Haynes Park in my vision.
Well, Haynes Park's very different. You know, you got a restroom building and you have a boat house and all that stuff. This is pretty remote. And I think that people would say, well, Public Works can do it or Park and Rec can do it. We've got to really think about that because it's not a given.
I mean, we're willing to take it on its entirety. You know, on its whole, we feel that our management has the ability to maintain it just like we maintain our other properties, and this would be no different. It'd just be another thing that we have to pay attention to.
Okay, so it's good we're getting into some of the specifics and looking down the road here. So I am hearing concerns about the shared control of this, and then it sounds to me like harbor management, one proposal they might be making, I don't want to put words in your mouth, is for you guys to take full control. Is that what you're thinking?
I'm not saying necessarily full control. I just think shared control with open space with outstanding conflicts of interest is going to be difficult.
Yeah. I mean, my reply to that, and naive, is that if there's clear understandings about the roles and responsibilities, and that could be ironed out as a possibility. But okay, I think we've knocked this around quite a bit around the table here. So I just like to open it up to the public so we can get their thoughts and kind of integrate that into what we're thinking. So who would like to speak? Anybody? Any comments? Mike McGee?
Yeah, Mike McGee, Boston Post Road. I'm also on the Harbor Commission. The Harbor Commission generally asks Public Works, and we actually sent a letter to the selectmen years ago, to clean up at Pilgrim Landing. We usually get them to do it in the spring, before Memorial Day, because there's a lot of debris that washes down in the spring, frankly. They've been good about that. Our letter asked for a general weed whacking and cleanup 4 times in the summer, once spring cleanup, once probably late June, just before the 4th of July weekend, once early August because the Phragmites and everything else has grown a lot, and then once again before swallows at the end of the Labor Day weekend. They have been doing the spring and they have been doing for the swallows, and they do a good job of brush hog, get all the Phragmites out. In the interim, this past summer, for example, the kayak rack was up at the parking lot. It was totally overgrown. You could hardly get to the far side of it for people that use it. We did a survey about 4 years ago for is there a desire in town, it's done on social media, for storage of kayaks and such small boats. And we got a good response. A lot of people wanted that. They recommended one at Haynes Park, one at White Sands Beach. Harbor Commission looked into that. Haynes Park Park and Rec was definitely opposed to a kayak racket at Haynes Park because the rowers have also wanted to store boats outside. So there's no storage outside storage boats at Haynes Park. That's their policy. It was requested that we have a rack at White Sands Beach. I spoke with Park and Rec about that. Don Bugby was not too enthusiastic because White Sands Beach has a lot going on, and I agree with him in his opinion is the sound is not the safest. So we take travel, we both want that Silver Lake without the money, and this summer it was full, all summer, people use it. Buttonball would be a wonderful place to have kayak storage and launching capabilities. So I don't think there's an issue with the crowd in Horseneck Creek. We do need to have underwater surveys done to know where that is. It is regulated. If it's the same, if that creek is the same as the river, you're only allowed to encroach into the navigable space 25%. Now, how they work that out in there, we're not sure, but I think that ditch can be utilized for any type of a ramp to reach an approved floating dock. not have it extend too far out into the creek, and also put it out of sight much of the time, which is beneficial. So I think it has a lot of potential. I think it should be primarily in the harbor management's I don't want to use the word jurisdiction, but they should have the most input on this because it is definitely usable as water access. You can use it to look, but I don't like the idea of it just look and don't touch philosophy for that piece of property. That's about all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you people for working so hard on this.
Thank you. Okay. Next comment, Terry?
Go ahead, say Michael.
Want to go?
All right.
Okay, Evan?
I have a little, thought about John, who mentioned that, the Open Space Commission had, the majority of our properties are large and open to the public. But we do have, in our, you look at the bylaws and what the purpose of the Open Space Commission is, yes, A, to provide large chunks of land for public access, but also to provide the town of Oakland areas where wildlife can thrive. And we have other small properties like the Ferry Landing property down Ferry Road, which is not open for public access. It's a wildlife refuge and fronts on the pond, on Chippy Pond and the Athlon Pond area down near DEP. And currently that's being managed for to eliminate invasive plants and to turn it over to wildlife refuge. Is an area that is very important to migrating birds in the spring and the fall and to wildlife, other wildlife in other parts. And so that's part of our mandate. Open Space isn't just a public access organization, it also is helping to maintain the character of Oakland and its biological importance. So I think that the idea of having structures there and having Park and Rec become involved the Black Hole River is a wildlife corridor. We see that very clearly in our management of the Ames property. We have wildlife cameras on the Ames property which show that many forms of wildlife are using the watershed and using that corridor from Black Hole Pond all the way to down. I think that we ought to keep in mind that Black Hole River watershed is important to the town of Oakland from more than simply public access.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Who would like to speak next? Terry? Recognize Terry Lewis.
So in the very, very beginning, when I first came on the property, I think one of the visions that we've all have had as open space members was this is a beautiful piece of property to be able to give it, show it, use it, and gain access. In the process of thinking about the property, I think we've all been on the same page. Preserving, being really good neighbors to the other, trying to be respectful, I think it kind of got lost a little bit about this is mine and this is mine versus like trudging forward a little faster on what's for the benefit of the property and kind of a law and do shit like John said. But one of the things that I still think is to try to keep it as natural as possible. We have all discussed how beautiful it is. It's why we sit on Harbor Management Commission. We are stewards to the water. We understand Evan's concerns. We do love nature, and it's why we're sitting on that board. It's why we do what we do. We take the time that we, every single month, to try to be a betterment for the town. But to deny for so long and to have the question of who's going to manage it, I feel like why is this just a town property? Why is it open space? You know, now we have water access, which we can help get the access and help manage it by going to reflect into the town of these ideas that we have. One of the ideas that we have is just an idea. I mean, we can't do anything without doing the proper channels of going to the DEP, and they're going to tell us what we can do. So trying to make something kind of sort of, you know, this is a draft. This is something that we think could work. It would be great for the town, but we don't know yet until we ask the DEP. So right now that has to be tabled, but getting the viewing platform to start would be very important on where it's placed for the future. So it's step one and step two. But as far as how we're, I don't want to say fighting over the property, but I think managing the property, I think too many hands in the pot makes for this. This, in January, will be a full year of Mr. Barnes bringing it to the board. And it's a full year later. I don't know if anybody knows that it's been that long, but it's been that long. So I'm just hoping that, I think going to the selectmen, as harbor management members, I think we could work with the selectmen as a town property. I don't understand why, if open space was so adamant about having this property and managing this property, it should have been done by now. It should have been done by now, as in 17 years ago should have been done by now. And that's what I say.
Okay. Thank you for those comments. Would anybody else like to speak? Amanda Blair?
Okay. I'd just like to thank George James for over 20 years ago petitioning the state to have this property deeded to the town for open space. He started this, and if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be talking about it today. Now, those open space in their notes and harbor management looked at this property over the years and deemed it was better left in a natural state because water access was very difficult. And I think if you look at the goals of the Open Space Commission and what we're charged to do, protect and preserve, versus the harbor management by their own plan and by state statute stops at the high water mark, then I think there's a clear definition. And I think those commissions can work together. I don't see a conflict of interest that's been disproved. And I think we can work together to see what could be used, but we have to protect the environment and the natural beauty of that piece. I've, been involved. I'm a budding landowner. I understand not only the rights of the public, but the private property owners have rights too. And so during this discussion, you asked and put down signs for public access, for parking, for leaving areas, all of this. However, I look at all of the other properties that harbor management, Pilgrim Landing, Town Landing, and there are absolutely no signs for public access. There are no signs marking leaving or this is the property of. There's no parking signs. There's no clearing. It's left in a natural state. So
Yeah,
That's
that's
one of
fine.
my concerns. Concerning the walking trail that we talked about to the water during all of this meeting, that was going to be a walking trail. The other day, I looked out my window and there is a car all the way up to the end, which in my view is a violation of that walking trail. Another concern is it is a flat piece of land that goes out to the marsh where anybody could drive onto the marsh. And then I see it trying to back around in a very difficult space. And then I see the same person, it's a little hard to see, has a black and white winter shirt on, right up by my driveway, by my parking lot. Now, I noticed that you came and marked the boundaries. When open space marks boundaries, first of all, we work with all the abutting landowners. We take their comments into consideration. Those boundaries markers leaving property are right on the boundary line, and I'm not sure that they're marked correctly. There is no buffer zone between to protect the private homeowner and the public. And that is a concern for me to have, if you have water access, that there will be cars parking all along and blocking that roadway. I think that's a concern that needs to be addressed. I think that restriction that the state put on that property over 20 years ago has never been enforced. Restrictions can be changed. We work with legislatures all the time, and we can adapt that. Or if there's not any indication of kayak use, of landing, or anything else. But the harbor management did look at that with our selectmen a number of years ago and deemed it not necessary because the difficulty of the mud flats and access to that property. That little roadway that we talk about has been abandoned for over 40 years. There is sea lavender growing on there, there's bayberry, and most of the time, that walkway has at least a few inches of water, if not more, on there. I thought that the purpose of this commission was to take a look at the property. There were going to be maybe a phase 2, but the phase 1 was just to identify the property and look at it. So, and that's what you've been doing. I'd like to ask the selectmen to put signs up at all of the water access that are similar to this. But there was not going to be any discussion during this phase. However, there has been a lot of unauthorized use over there, the cutting, the brush hog mowing in that property. And then recently in talking to my surveyor, he informed me that a member of one of these commissions called them and asked for a CAD PDF to be sent to a surveyor, implying that this was going to be surveyed by this authority. He sent it, and then in talking to me, he said, "Who do I send this bill to?" And I said, I've never seen anyone authorize any of these programs or expenses. And so I think they're putting the cart before the horse. I think they need to review. We haven't done a study yet of what birds are down there, what plants are down there. That was the first thing that was going to be done. So I think that the Open Space Commission was originally awarded this property. It's open space. I think we could work with harbor management, the high water mark, because that's what their plan says, and that's what the state statute says. Okay.
While we're in public.
Okay, thank you.
While we're in, I just want to make one comment. This reiterates my concern for the conflict of interest as she's saying open space and we in the same sentence. Just going to throw that out there.
Okay, all right, thanks.
I would like to add one more comment. Because open space has this property, and harbor management has been so hostile to it. The harbor management commission brought me up on a conflict of interest I went before the ethics board, and by unanimous decision, there was no conflict of interest. So the smoke and mirrors is not there. There is no conflict of interest, for the record.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Look, I think to a certain extent, it's important to express what we're thinking. Hopefully it's just a little cathartic. But I just want to mention something. I think it's an important general comment to make to everybody is if we keep on mentioning conflicts of interest and disagreeing with each other and thinking the worst of each other, you know, you say that enough and then you start believing it, it becomes real. So publicly, I want to say, you know, when Mike brought this up and was enjoying the commission, there was stuff going on in town. I thanked him for bringing this to the attention of the town. I think it's important that we're working on this. So we've mentioned some grievances along the way, but I think it's important that we look forward and start thinking a little bit better of each other, okay? Now, I mentioned that open space, whether this is going to come to pass or not, has signaled the willingness to work with harbor management, okay? Okay, I have no illusions that there's going to be some friction along the way, but, you know, if you keep on butting at each other, it's going to keep on festering.
Just making an observation, Fred.
I think the point has been made amply enough in discussions.
And she reiterates it every time.
Can I?
This is a comment to everyone, not just you, Mike.
You're looking at me, Fred.
Well, okay, everybody, okay?
I mean, I hope we also move past the finger pointing, but this last exchange really reinforces my initial commentary that you know, I don't really see this property being divided because there's conflicting.
Okay.
There's just conflicting visions about what this property is going to be.
Let me quickly.
And it still hasn't been made clear to us what open space's vision is.
Let me comment. So I think that's a great point. I think it's realistic. I think that's an important point that's come out of this meeting today is that open space needs to come up with a clear vision of what they're going to offer. They need to do that to some extent in conjunction with harbor management if they're going to do that. Okay, so anyway, I just want to acknowledge, John, I think that's a very fair point. Okay, Martha.
I have two questions. I have a question and a comment. The question is, what is the timeline for harbor management working with DEP to find out what is?
Step one is we need to get a hydrographic survey. So our next meeting, we intend to get some quotes for a hydrographic survey. So that will help us make informed.
And then what happens after you get the results of the survey? You have to submit that to DEP?
Yeah, so basically we would implement some sort of site plan to show the dock laid out with the hydrographic survey and the contours of the river. And then we would include DEP in this whole process, all the way from the pre-app application process all the way to the end process.
And do you have any idea of how long that takes usually?
Yeah. A month after we've presented them with something, and I'm confident that we can get a permit within a year if we have all the site plans and the appropriate boxes checked within the paperwork, the application.
So basically, you're going to start this process at your next meeting in January?
We intend to. Yeah, we would like to, yes.
Because that comes with your vision for the future for this property?
Correct.
Okay. So you wouldn't have, figure by March, maybe?
I think that...
April, you might have to meet?
I think we might have something sooner than that, basically on the pre-app process. So, you know, what happens is you go through the pre-app process, you file your application, and then, it goes through the rigmarole, the National Diversity Database goes through it, the Army Corps has to go through it, and then at some...
Get to comment on it.
Yep, there'll be
really interface with other commissions. It's not going to proceed very quickly.
I'm sorry, say that again?
If you don't interface with other folks and learn about what impacts the proposed activity has.
Yeah, that's why we work with DEP.
Well, I'm forgetting DEP because they're really an arbitrator. They're going to look at the statute, but okay, if you don't work with other local commissions, I predict the review process is going to take a lot longer given the history of what's been going on this site.
Okay, so it's a process, just a couple of months out.
It could be petitioned to public hearing, and that could take
years.
Okay. My other comment is when we asked for the committee to come about, we asked for it to make recommendations and asked that any commission that was involved was going to make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. And if I'm right? And both commissions would, and the Board of Selectmen would hear those plans moving forward and make some recommendations.
And I think another thing was that this environmental review of the marsh was something, maybe DEP can do that?
Yes, that's the process. They're the authority. They're the ones who delineate the ability.
I disagree with that comment. It's just wrong.
Why?
Because they don't have the staff or the capacity to do it. They don't even have the capacity to review applications in a timely manner, let alone review and approve, do some sort of detailed analysis. You're not going to get a written report from DEP. I've never seen one.
Just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Well, then get me one.
I intend to.
Okay? But I'm sure the Open Space Commission will have a very detailed analysis of whatever is proposed with a more detailed evaluation of what's going on the marsh, all the vegetation, all the animals that are likely to be there, and all the potential impacts, even including interference with navigation. Right now, we don't even really have an accurate drawing. I mean, you pointed it out. We don't even know where the edge of the creek is, okay, let alone cross-section of the creek dimension, how far the dock goes out, whether or not it blocks upstream access. I mean, there are a whole series of questions that I could ask that could slow this down.
I guess if you want to slow it down, that's one way to do it.
If we don't work together, that's what might happen.
I mean, that sounds like a threat, unnecessary threat, but...
It's not a threat. I'm just telling you, more can happen working together than
it sounds
going off on a tangent.
I agree, and I just want to let you know that DEP is monitoring this closely for the use that they designated this for. I can tell you that they are paying attention to this, and they're expecting to see an application regarding this property.
Well, wait till I talk to the commissioner of DEP, and we'll see.
Talk to the deputy commissioner while you're at it, because he's the one that's watching.
There you go.
Okay.
So that is a blatant block.
Okay.
That is a blatant block from open space.
I don't think that's an opinion.
comment by me.
That's an opinion from one of the committee.
Well, you just said open space would be
It is.
that would make this argument.
You take it as you
That I could do it.
Well, I think when we started, I think we all want to have the public access. It becomes now a question of how do you manage the public access? And certainly, coming to the edge of the marsh and looking out with a bench and that sort of thing, no problem. If you were to create a platform with a walkway, probably no problem. I think we were concerned that in some of our waterfront areas, the public is not exactly friendly to the environment. Take Watch Rock. So this is isolated, and we want to make sure that hopefully we won't have a horde of people coming there, but we want to make sure who does come there treats it properly, and it's not going to be monitored all the time. So if there's signage and so forth, hopefully people will be good. The practicality of using this water course with the mud flats and all, I think, Sloan, you figured out how you might get to water and so forth. So I think we can go step by step and see, but maybe the first thing is to make sure environmentally that is okay, the marsh can take it, because they're not going to just go out on this little walkway. You know, you can look at the Black Hall River north and south of the bridge, the car bridge there on Shore Road. They're all over the place. So we don't want that here, hopefully. And so I think we need to understand, can the marsh take people walking on the grass as well as going out on a platform? Because they will probably. Yeah. So I think that environmental thing would be that calm a lot of people down if we got that sooner than later.
Tim, to your point, that's DEP's jurisdiction. That's what they do.
So the next step would be to get that report, maybe?
It's not so much a specified report as it would be a tentative notice to approve or deny, right? So if we put an application in and they determine that the ability for this marsh or this property to support public access exists and that the environmental impacts versus the people impacts or public access impacts are weighed, right? And they determine which one, if the environmental impacts outweigh the public access impacts, then they prohibit it. If the public access ability is greater than the environmental impacts, they'll approve it for use.
Or they may focus and say, here's how you might mitigate something and say fencing or
like the
signage or what.
The stuff that Mike's talking about is something that you typically do to try to stop development, right? So if you have a permit and you're trying to get a permit and during the public comment period, Mike could bring his environmental studies and do everything he wants to do to prove that the DEP is making the wrong decision. And then the DEP then has the latitude to decide whether the relevant facts that he brought forward are valued enough to...
Have you seen any kind of reports that the DEP may have generated for something like this previously?
Yes.
Well, maybe get a copy or two and we can look at them and see.
That's no problem. I can provide that.
Yeah, because if they're good, thorough reports, that would probably give everybody encouragement that this is the way to go.
That's the thing, is like when we apply for an application, DEP is the authority that makes those decisions. So us hiring a third-party person to say that this is good or bad is irrelevant to the fact that DEP is the ultimate authority. So if we can hire 10 people that say it's the worst thing in the world, the environment's going to be ruined, and at the end of the day, DEP could still be like, you know what, too bad, we're putting a dock in.
All right, well, maybe...
Exactly, and the thing is I've reviewed thousands of docks. DEP doesn't deny docks. They're going to approve it.
Our family's in the dock building business.
And Terry, just a couple minutes. Yeah.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
that is not specifically true, what he just said. We're in the dock building business, we have looked at gazillions, and we get private people get denied and have to make changes on almost every single proposal. It's the DEP who has the authority, and them.
They ultimately approve.
They do all of the specifics, which are super important to the environment. And you have to do all of the hydrographic surveys. They do all of their own stuff. And we are abiding by what they say. If they say that this is not a reasonable creation, there's nothing we can do about it. We're fine with that. But we have to take that step next. It's denying it instantly, like you're trying to do, is the most ridiculous thing. Let the DEP do their job.
Well, I think we're all in favor of, exploring to see if this is possible. So, I'm going to try to wrap this up in a few minutes. So for me, it would help, you mentioned something about the recommendations. So I was under the impression that the committee would have to come up with a unified recommendation to you. But you mentioned something about each commission offering recommendations.
I tried to find it in a minute. Originally, it said that the two committees would work together, but come up with... Three committees.
That way.
Yeah,
Three commissions.
We had discussed that, and then we had hoped to come up with a unified...
Through this commission.
To submit to the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
So
I agree, that's what
why don't we all come back at the next meeting with some simple bullet-pointed proposals from each commission, and maybe we can sit here and hash out each bullet-pointed proposal to come up with a final proposal to submit to the selectmen. And let's try to keep it simple. Let's not get lost in the weeds. Let's not get lost in the minutia. Let's have some basic proposals to submit to the Board of Selectmen. And if necessary, we just vote on each bullet point that comes in.
Well, I mean, I tried to address those higher level issues with these recommendations. So, listen to the discussion today. I mean, a lot of this does hinge on what ultimately is going to happen at this property. So let's say a dock gets put in with great kayak launching and all that, then there's going to be more attention to be paid to how we're going to accommodate that, however that happens, okay? If, for whatever reason, a dock gets denied, then there's obviously more of an open space type environment would be maintained. Okay, I might have gotten that a little bit wrong, but... Or town, or whatever. Okay, but harbor management would not be as involved. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay, so, when I listed the order of these recommendations, I kind of went back and forth. I actually initially had, directing Harbor Management Commission to look into this possibility as the first thing. And in a way that is maybe, it's sort of chicken and egg thing, maybe a little bit, but maybe priority should be placed on that because a lot hinges on that. So, You know, that was gonna be a recommendation to the board to direct commission to look into that. But you've already started doing that. And we should accelerate that.
Would it be possible to just, you know, have the water course and maybe different segments, like at low tide, less comes here, at high tide?
So, to that point, that's what the hydrographic survey, and Ms. Blair made a comment about someone contacting the surveyor and trying to get a copy of the CAD file and all. That was me trying to get a CAD file so we can overlay for you guys this plan onto the site plan and not have just this sketch. We were trying to bring you guys an actual plan that would be legible with points of reference, which is typically the process when you go to create a dock or you put it on a site plan. You create drawings that correspond to the survey, and you can't do that without the survey. So you need the survey in order to overlay the dock.
A naive question, but is that the survey that you personally paid for, Amanda?
I have a survey that he gave to the property, and he asked me, when we were talking about it the other day, who to submit the bill for, and who was authorized to do this request to him. He thought it was a request from that committee here, and then when he called the surveyor, he said, no, I did it as a favor to Michael Lawrence. And he said, well, I have a bill.
A bill for what? We already paid for the survey.
Yeah, I don't think there is a bill involved.
They're just providing us with a copy.
I'm just confused. Is it the survey that was recently done, or was it your personal survey?
The town got a survey of this property.
Exactly.
Yes.
Is that what you were?
Yes.
No, it was a CAD survey to be sent.
But we generally don't have citizens calling town.
No, I'm
Company.
just questioning. Was it the survey that we all split and paid for?
Yes.
Okay, so we're split and paid for a survey and you asked for
A copy of it.
a copy of it?
A digital copy of it.
I requested and implied to the surveyor that the commission here.
No, that's not accurate, ma'am. I'm the one that had the conversation with them, so I know what I said and I know who I talked to.
And I know I have to get.
Okay, hold on a second. What did it?
Correct.
No, this is just making sure that we were.
Okay, Tim, do you want to comment on this at all, or
Well, I think
just
we
set
should
the record
have a
straight?
central focal point talking with lawyers, surveyors, you name it. Because if we start having any councilperson asking, that's not the committee, we all pay for it. But I don't think we want to have 8 or 9 people calling Dick Gates and saying, I think they should come through.
Terry, hold on.
Wait a minute. We should probably have a request for something come through me so that I'll get it for you. It's a reasonable request. But as opposed to just, because we have this with the lawyers, you know, various people in town hall will call a law firm. And this is not good practice.
This isn't anything like that. Hold on, just let me comment. We paid for a survey. Typically, you get a copy of the survey. Besides the paper format, you either get a PDF version of it or a CAD file version. A CAD file versus a PDF is the exact same thing. It's a different software that reads it. So when I ask for a copy of the CAD file, that's so that way we can draw on top of his map to put this dock that you guys asked for.
Ask me to get the thing, I'll get it for you.
That's fine, but I didn't think it was a big deal because these things are turned over on a regular basis.
Okay, look, I just want to put it into this conversation, and let me just think. What happened?
You have to have a copy.
Well, Terry?
No.
Terry?
In all
All
fairness,
we're saying is, in the future, requests of this nature should go through.
Yeah, but the reason it came through Harbor Management is because you guys asked for a draft.
I'm just saying in the future, telling people on the committee, the requests of this nature need to go through the town, the first selectman as he's requested. Simple as that, okay? Fair enough?
And that's true for town hall and everything.
This is SOP, Standard Operating Procedure, okay? And then okay, I don't know, maybe, is a motion something along the lines of, and get the mechanics of this straight, is to authorize the Board of Selectmen to, you know, instruct the Harbor Management Commission to move forward with, you know, their proposal, so that we get going on this and have something more concrete to discuss as we go forward, because so much hinges on is it possible or not. What is the whole
I think we ought to understand what economic needs there may be.
Well, that would be part of the proposal, obviously,
So long as it's no money is committed at the outset. If you're gonna come back and say, here's what we're gonna do, and it's gonna cost $1,800 or whatever, I think we need to know before commitments are made, how much it will cost, right?
Okay, so question to Harbor Management Commission, is this gonna cost money to come up?
You gotta apply to DEP, it's a few $100.
Yeah.
Depending on what
And to create, so we already have half of the information because we've already paid for the CAD file. If once we receive it or once we receive a copy of it, then we can overlay our draft onto this survey, which would have to accompany up to DEP with an application. So we've already paid for half of what we're looking for.
But we just need to understand the whole economic.
Yeah, so I can't give you an economic until I understand whether DEEP is going to approve or deny based on whatever changes they might want. So I can't give you an accurate representation of the cost if they're going to change the scope of the work.
I think Tim's only asking for the cost up to the application.
to get going.
Yeah, so basically,
Up to the application point.
I mean, even then, we could, out of our own fund, which is separate to the town.
Maybe down the road, so we can say, should we try to figure out how to have $1,000, $5,000?
Yeah.
Whatever. I mean, we just can't go death by 1,000 cuts.
I agree.
Let's get the whole,
So are we okay with this subcommittee recommending that we move forward with this draft version of what we've proposed here?
I'd like to see it taken first.
I don't know, we make a motion or anything?
And I need the overlay to do that.
Yeah, and how it relates to the channel.
Again, that's all part of the hydrographic survey, so I can't give you those answers to those questions until I have the hydrographic survey.
Well, you could stake it in the field though, so we know approximately where it is on the ground.
Yeah, I think that's putting the cart before the horse, because you gotta have the yes, because why would I stake it if it's gonna move?
Well, Tim's gonna get the file, so, right, so you're gonna get the CAD file, and you can pass that on, and then.
Mike has the CAD file.
No, I don't. I do not yet.
You don't have it yet?
No.
Oh, I thought you had it.
No.
Probably wants money.
No, but that's the thing, though. Like, we've already paid for it.
Paid for it.
So there shouldn't be any other monetary exchange.
So if Tim can get the file, you can do the overlay, and then we can stake it out.
At this point, we'll just need a PDF and we'll trace it. Like, I can do without the CAD file.
If you want the CAD file, we can get it, but the other thing is, I want a copy of the CAD file to stay here for a few.
So that, to me, any work that this town does in the hiring of engineers should be a condition that before you pay them, they turn over copies of the CAD file. Because the problem is, because you already paid for it, and if you want to use somebody else, now you got to pay to do it all over again. So I am a strong advocate, and I've talked about that within Harbor Management. Any work that we do, from here point forward, we're requesting copies of these CAD files because we're paying for them.
Mm-hmm.
so when you talked to Dick Gates, did you ask for this?
I did, yep, and he's like, he said, I won't turn it over to you unless I'm turning it over to an engineer that I trust.
Oh, because it can be modified, and then it has the implication that it's their work and it's not, if someone modifies it.
My intention for requesting it was just so I can pay a friend of mine to go over and basically superimpose this drawing onto the map, so that way we weren't looking at 8x10s.
Can you do that with a PDF?
Yes, so that's the thing. We can just do the PDF and you just trace over.
Right, you're not gonna modify a PDF, so it's,
Okay.
he should give that up, Tim.
To clear the air, I mean, Dick Gates did call me up and said that you'd requested the CAD file. I had the impression he gave it to you. He mentioned to me that it was no cost to the town.
Yeah, it shouldn't.
Which makes sense because we paid for it. And
I don't know.
So it was not I thought that you had it, okay?
No, he didn't,
So
he won't turn it over to me personally because he
We
doesn't
need to
know
get
me.
it to you. Okay, so now you know to give Dick a call. And,
PDF.
does this make sense to the committee to proceed with staking things out first, once we get the PDF?
Yeah, so the PDF, all I need is PDF. The only sole reason was so that way you guys had a full, like, for instance, he took a copy of the survey and then stenciled this on here. My intention was to bring you a huge survey file that you see the whole property in its entirety, so everybody got an understanding, right? That site plan, in essence, I was trying to create would have created a profile view. It would have shown the dock on the water. It would have shown the driveway. It would have shown the parking. It would have shown everything in its entirety.
We can still do that.
Yes.
Okay.
But I guess our question is do we need a motion here in this committee to move forward to do that? To create this site? Because you asked us to do that, that's what I was doing, and those were the steps I was taking to get it
I
done.
don't think it's a new motion, I think it's decided on, and if that's.
So are you guys comfortable with this general layout to be plotted on a?
This is just the dock.
Yes.
But, Sloan, you put it out here because this is the shortest thing.
Yeah.
But up here, this is the walking path and the parking and stuff, so this would require a different route.
Yeah.
A different road. But what's the difference between this location and this location that you selected this?
It was the shortest span across the marsh.
How much difference is it up here?
20
feet. Ditch or something?
Yeah, it's about 20 additional feet.
So
20 feet?
all right, so I'll make a motion, let's cut to the chase here. I'll make a motion that the PDF CAD file be given to Michael Barnes and Harbor Commission to overlay on a larger scale map so that we can eventually stake it out for everyone to see.
I'll second that motion.
Mike seconded, okay. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So,
And while we're on the topic, if you guys would like further detailed information, I don't know, it's up to our harbor management, but I can see us engaging a hydrographic survey, so that way we can provide you with the actual factual information of where this thing can actually lie.
Yeah.
So me putting this on an overlay of a survey map is only part of the information. So I'd rather get an understanding of the biometric contours of the river. That way I can plot that on a map and show you that, okay, this is the best spot for this float to sit. Or, no, you know what, actually, it can't be there at all. It needs to be over here. So that is another piece to the puzzle that I guess we can work within harbor management to get that information. So that way when we come back, I can be like, all right, well, here's the contours. I mean, we did an upland survey. Basically, this is a waterside survey. Right. Both of those are equally important to understand and comprehend how this thing would play out in DEP, Army Corps, and within this commission.
but just to be clear, we've gone back and forth with where the stock is.
Yeah, well, so that's my point.
This is back to one of the...
There's no point in us moving this thing around in 10 different places until we have the hydrographic survey.
This is DEP would want, this is where they would suggest it to
So
be,
what's
not what we would want.
What's the time frame?
I think I could probably get a hydrographic survey within a month.
A month.
Okay.
My goal would be, if we have the PDF file, and
How much does that cost?
hydrographic survey is probably about $2,500, give or take.
And harbor management's gonna pay that out of their budget.
Yeah. I mean,
That's like independent of this committee, right? Harbor management can.
yeah, but I just want to just make it clear that that is my intention, is to bring you guys back more information, so that way we can all make informed decisions. Because right now, we're just shooting in the dark, and we're just hoping and praying, and we got no factual information.
I think that would be important to any final proposal, so I would certainly encourage harbors to do that, so that we have, I mean, there's not a lot of sense in staking it out.
Yep, that's my point, yeah.
Not gonna be, so, yeah, I mean, if you can get it done, I would say, let's get it done.
So we're not gonna have that by the,
Probably not.
by the 12th.
No.
Okay, so okay, we've accomplished that piece. Then, looking forward, look, there's a lot of pushback on the dual ownership control, so the next meeting, come back up with, you know, other proposals we can consider, okay, that you think might be realistic. And I guess that might be, anything else anybody wants to mention?
I'll motion to adjourn.
Okay, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, guys.
Happy holidays, everybody.